Hello everyone. You probably hear music in the background because when I'm in the kitchen like this, I have to have music and I don't own the rights to this music, just so you know. Let's just go ahead and jump into this video and let me tell you what I'm doing today on day 2 of my Thanksgiving prep. So the first thing I'm doing is washing my sweet potatoes. I've got 6 large sweet potatoes and I'm going to prep my sweet potato casserole. But first we've got to cook these potatoes. Now I need the oven, so I am not going to use my oven. I am going to put these potatoes in my crock pot. But before I do this, I did add a half a cup of water to the crock pot just to put some moisture in that crock pot. Put the lid on it, turn your crock pot on high, and I will let you know at the end of the video how long it took to cook these sweet potatoes. The next thing on my list to do is to go ahead and make a pan of cornbread so that I can have that pre-made for my dressing. I am going to freeze this cornbread. I've made 1 skillet of cornbread. If you want that recipe, it is 2 cups of cornmeal, 1/4 cup of oil, 1 egg, and about 1 cup or maybe 1 1/4 cup of milk. I just guess that. You do want to get your oil hot, about 3 tablespoons in that iron skillet first before you pour the batter in. Cook it on 400 degrees for about 30 minutes. This is not my usual pan of cornbread. This is the recipe that I use to make my cornbread dressing. I did set my timer for 20 minutes so that I would not forget to check on my cornbread. That's another thing. A timer is a great thing to utilize when you are prepping, meal prepping, and doing a lot of cooking in the kitchen because you'll get busy with something else and forget about what you've got in the oven. Now, I've made up some biscuit dough, and you can always look back for my biscuit recipe. This is just a basic biscuit recipe. I did set aside a little bit of this dough because I'm going to use that in another recipe. Now I just made 1 huge biscuit and I'm making this for my dressing, and I will freeze this as well. Once my biscuit is cooled off, I just put it in a Ziploc bag and put it in the freezer. The same thing with the cornbread, although I do score my cornbread and then I put it in a Ziploc bag. I will be making another pan of cornbread as well, but probably not today. Switching gears onto my next task, and yes, I'm going to cheat. I love Sara Lee's pumpkin pies. I have made homemade pumpkin pie from scratch, and in my opinion, it was just not worth it. This Sara Lee's pumpkin pie you can get for a little over $5, and hey, it doesn't get it much easier than this. But we're gonna make this pumpkin pie look like you made it from scratch. This is so simple to do. We are going to get creative. And if you don't feel like being creative, you can always buy some pastry cutters in the shape of leaves. Remember, I set aside just a little bit of that biscuit dough to use. That's what I'm using for this. You can always cheat and buy pre-made pastry dough. But back to my biscuit dough. When you're making fried pies or even a pie crust, you can use biscuit dough, but you really have to work with it because you want it stiff. So I just used my pizza roller to cut out the shape of a leaf, and I'm using my spatula to make the veins in the leaf. And this is what it looks like. Not too bad. And I will say this, when you put the leaves on, you do want to make sure you keep your finger wet with water or milk, and that does help it to stick to the pie crust that's already there. You are going to have to press it down a little if you do, and maybe you press too hard and you don't see the vein in your leaf or something. Once you've got it on the pie crust, you can go back and make those indentions again. It's really that easy. Once you've got your leaves all the way around the crust the way you want it, you make your own design, and it's going to be beautiful. And then we're going to do an egg wash. That is 1 egg white and 3 tablespoons of milk. Then we're going to brush that pastry with this egg wash. Now this is ready to go in the oven, and we're just going to follow the instructions on the Sara Lee box, which is 375 degrees for 75 minutes. Also, if you want a perfectly brown crust, put an aluminum pan on top of this. You won't regret it. It's going to be pretty. Take that aluminum pan off about 10 minutes before it's ready to get out of the oven, and voila, this is done. Isn't this pretty? It looks like you made it from scratch. I am going to freeze this pie. I have frozen pies before and they turn out great, but I'm going to let this completely cool until I freeze it. Once it was completely cooled, I wrapped it in saran wrap and I put it back in the box carefully. My sweet potatoes have been cooking in the crock pot on high for about 4.5 hours, I do believe. They're ready. I'm going to have to let those cool off, and I'll be making a sweet potato casserole. So y'all make sure to come back tomorrow.